sit here. We'll both look pretty. I know you will. And I'm just going to see if it's going on Twitch. I'll probably show up in a second. Oh, there it is.
Yeah, I
And
don't see any question. I'm not on Twitch, so you'll need to, if there is a question, you need to moderate. And
yeah, I just want to make sure the sound's off here because I have a bad habit of turning the sound on. Just give me a second. Okay, so that's working. So why is this not? Oh, there we go. I have to hit watch now. There we go. And then the mute's off. Okay, cool. That's perfect. All right. So, um, okay, that's going on. That's going on. I think we're live. Yeah, I think so. Good afternoon. Good afternoon, everyone. I mean, it's the afternoon where I'm at, which is Toronto, or I should say East Coast. And I'm going to say good evening, Tim. How are you doing?
doing very well. Thank you. And
Awesome.
yourself?
Not bad. Thanks for asking, actually, because I've been in a bit of a funk. How could I explain it? The weather's just been horrible, and I just don't know what to do outside of move, and I'm not going to move. But it's, I don't know, it's April 28th, and this morning it was 0 degrees, and it was -4 with wind chill, and I just did not have the willpower to go out for a run. Like normally I would, but I just now I'm just done. Like I just want the good weather. I want sun. I want to wear a light jacket. I don't know. How's it by you?
Well, I just came back from a holiday. I was a week in France in a very sunny area, so I'm happy. And once I return to Belgium, the sun is also shining here. So from that perspective, come over to Belgium.
I mean, I will. Honestly, I do want to come back to Europe and just hang out for a bit. So if you hear this knock at the door once, and that was like one day, and it's not expected, do not be surprised to see me with a bit of luggage and a couple laptops. So it's thanks for the offer. I do need the sun though at this point because it's depressing how just poor the weather is. Because on top of that, I want to go out and running, and I just don't feel like wearing a big jacket anymore to go run. Well, a big jacket, a running jacket, anyways. Anyhow, enough about that. Enough about my depression. It's not fun. But what is fun is hanging out with some of my favorite people like Tim. Welcome to Webpage Test Live. We took a break last week for a bunch of reasons, and this week we've been a little busy. We're kind of working hard actually, and we forgot to announce that we were back this week. But first of all, I want to thank Tim for taking up my offer to come back. We had a fantastic episode from a few weeks ago. Actually, I'll maybe find the link and drop it in the chat. See what's going on. Oh, who's that? Someone's from ATL. Let's go. All right. Everything's love. Thank you very much for coming. Um, and no, we had a fantastic episode, and then we're gonna have another fun one today. But like I'd mentioned in the green room, I guess the green room, Tim and I were talking about a bunch of things, and I thought we could sort of bring it up in public, um, sort of like web performance news, I suppose, something like that. What are your thoughts on fetch priority finally shipping?
Oh, I'm very. There are two parts. A,
Okay.
I'm very happy that you now have more control because I thought it was like a little bit annoying when you preloaded, for example, in your hero image, and then your font file would still be loaded earlier, which was a little bit strange. So the fact that you now have that control is, I think, great. The downside of additional control is that potentially many of us will then overuse it, and then once you start adding fetch priority everywhere to play around with things. So yeah, so on one hand I'm excited, the other hand I'm already looking forward to the next blog post or web page test waterfalls where you see that somebody overdid it and basically worked with everything. So yeah, so a little bit in between the two.
Yeah, it's going to be very interesting. And you know what? Let's. It's. I don't want to be a bad host, so apologies to anyone listening. Did you want to maybe run down for the audience right there, tuning in, what fetch priority is?
Oh yeah, so sure. Um, so the browser, when it scans your HTML, it will it will look for different resources, and different resources get different priorities when asked from, for example, over the HTTP2 connection. So in theory, your CSS files should have like highest priority, and then your images are typically lower priority.
Hmm.
What does that mean? In theory, is that the server will first send the high priority things and next the low priority things. That, however, means if you have, like, for example, a lot of JavaScript, a lot of CSS, that your hero image, which typically then has the low priority, it comes in later. And with the fetch priority together with the preload tag, you can basically instruct the browser in an easy way to tell the browser, like, I know that this image is key, so whatever you do, give this the highest priority. So that's fetch priority. Now you can increase the priority. In theory, you can also use it to um, downgrade the priority for certain resources which you don't want to be loaded instantly.
Yeah.
That's the short summary.
And a great summary it is. Thank you. And this is going to be a very interesting moment, like you said, because sometimes people, developers, may have a tendency, a penchant to prioritize too many things all at once, and things can get a little hairy. And I remember seeing some of that in the early days of resource hints. People would add like preload to like everything,
Yes.
and it was like, okay, this does not look right. So it will be it'll be interesting to see how people use fetch priority, and ideally in a disciplined manner. But it's been rumored, and I was talking to someone, I think yesterday. I can't remember anymore. My memory's shot, but it's been rumored to have some very uh, great results with respect to the LCP, so the largest contentful paint. So that'll be very interesting to see how that gets sort of implemented, and some of the results that come from that. So, but no, it's going to be very, like I said, interesting, but a fantastic release. I think in V101 of Chrome. If Patrick Meaning's out there listening, because I know that he's been uh, doing a lot of work over at Chrome for that, so that'll be pretty exciting. Um, yeah, anything that improves load times and or potentially scores, which we'll get into in a hot minute. The LCP is going to be very important for that. Something else I actually want to talk to you about, and since you're in Europe, I think is going to have a significant impact if it does happen. um, Last night specifically, I had a conversation with someone with regards to iOS and everything that seems to be happening with regards to Europe versus Apple on the iOS store, and the browsers that you're able to use on iOS devices. And from what I gather, and maybe you're probably more up to speed than I am, up to speed, pardon me. Um, but it looks like iOS may be forced to open up their platform to blink browsers. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's also how I understood it. So, as a background, today you can already download Chrome, for example. I run Chrome on my iPhone, but in the backend, it's basically using the WebKit engine. So
Right.
it's
Hmm.
not really Chrome. So today, all browsers on your iPhone, so of course Safari, but also yeah, for example, Firefox or Chrome, in the backend, it's still the WebKit engine.
And
So
yeah,
it's not really Chrome or not really Firefox.
yeah.
And the downside is that, yeah, because it's not really Chrome, it's like something in between. It's not really Firefox.
Yeah.
It's something in between. So what is supported, what is not supported.
Hmm.
So from my perspective, from a developer perspective, it would be nicer and easier if you just had the full Chrome on your iOS device and not like a special version of it.
Yeah.
The same with Firefox. So
Yeah.
I think from a web developer perspective, that would be yeah, a lot easier.
I mean, it'll be interesting. I think it opens up a lot of interesting conversations. For one, being able to collect a bit more data would be awesome, obviously. And I say data for those listening. Getting some of that telemetry and data, which is how we're able to look at stuff, say in Crux, and because right now with iOS and Safari, they basically are not really represented in that data set. So that'll be interesting to have. But however, some people have said that this may be the beginning of the end for other browsers, potentially because of Chrome's potential
Supremacy.
for supremacy and potential for the monopoly that may expand even more, yet to be determined. But that is very fresh and new chatter taking place, so it'll be interesting to see what happens there. But that all said, I know I mentioned that the LCP, which affects your score, is going to be hopefully greatly improved when fetch priority ships in stable, by the way, now in stable, as Mr. Meenan just mentioned, because he's in the chat. Thank you, Patrick. Um, let's talk about scores. And the reason I reached out to Tim today, for those listening and watching, is that Tim is absolutely proficient in squeezing every bit of how can I put it, optimization out of his resources, out of his sites, the sites that he works on. So on the weekend, I'm sorry, folks, I was on Twitter. Yes, I know. And someone had been sort of, grousing, kind of complaining that they could not get past 90 points or 90, whatever they are, on Lighthouse. And they were going on and on. I think they were complaining to a framework author. And I think I chimed in. I said something like, hey, have you looked at the details? And essentially I tagged Tim to say, hey, this gentleman right here, this engineer at Akamai, quite often shares his sort of ultra optimizations, shaving off all he can to make sure that the site is as uh, spry as possible. And I think Tim came in and took his 90 score, looked at his site, and was like, hey, you need to do this, you need to do that, you need to change this, and here you go, 100 points. And I think the person was pleasantly pleased. I think they liked your tweet, and that's the last we heard of them. So I think it worked out. So I thought it'd be interesting today to talk about that. Talk about having a score, and sometimes people aren't too sure what to do afterwards. They've made some sort of low hanging optimizations, like some easy ones, some of the classic ones. Then after that, it's like, okay, I'm stuck at 87. I don't know what to do. But they get the green ring, and the green ring means, hey, things are good. And some might move off, some might try to squeeze a bit more and get their 90, but some often probably drop off. But that's when Tim comes in. He's like, listen, I'm going to give you 105 on the Lighthouse. So I thought we'd talk about that today. So are you fine to talk about this, Tim?
Absolutely, yes.
All right.
Absolutely.
Did you have a screen to share at all, or?
Yeah, let me share my screen and let me move my phone because I'm looking on my phone at the chat on Twitch.
No sweat.
So let me share my screen. All right. Can you see my screen?
And I cannot yet, but let me see here. Share. No.
Sorry, Chrome has lost permissions to capture screen. Go to system preference. Let me double.
Oh,
Oh, that will not be good.
you may have to reboot. I'm
Please.
not sure.
Yeah,
Hopefully not.
let's hopefully not. Chrome. Yeah, I'll need to quit Chrome. I'll be right. I'll basically be right back.
No sweat. All right. Well, folks, it's you and I. So these are the challenges. Sometimes you have to do a quick reboot if you want to share some docs. But what I did want to say before I go any further, and someone did remind me in the chat, big birthday to one of my teammates, Jeff. Shout out to Jeff. I know you probably took the day off and you're probably walking around town with some very expensive shoes on your feet. One of our teammates at WebPage Test and actually an engineer. It's his birthday today. So someone in the chat was nice enough to remind me. I totally forgot. So thank you. Um, it looks like Tim is back, so let me bring him back to the stream. There you go, Tim. Welcome back.
Thank you. Thank you.
And
Can you hear me?
yes, I can. And I'm going to wait till you try to share.
Let me quickly go to quickly bring up the screen I wanted to share, because since I restarted Chrome, I'll have to redo that.
No problem.
Where is the one I wanted to share?
Yes, Mr. Meaden. Mac OS permissions are fun.
Yeah, and they always come in when you don't want them to come in. So
Absolutely.
let's have a look. Trio webpage test. And my letter T is broken for somehow. So let's do that. All right. Let me share my screen.
Okay.
Oh, perfect. And I have 100 score on the first. So share screen. Perfect. Luckily, we're not live, right?
And I see it now. Add to stream. Bingo. And
All
we
right.
are good. All right.
All right. So before I start about tweaking the score to 100, so this is one of my pages. So for those who don't know me, I run the largest scale modeling website in the world with around 50,000 visitors a day. So it's quite heavily visited, and I have like product pages which scale modeling kits. And as you can see here, I have a score of 100 on mobile, which was basically the question from the person, like, can I even get to 100 on mobile? The answer is absolutely yes. Is it always 100? No, sometimes depending on the page I might be at 99, 98. In this case, I'm lucky that on the first shot I'm at 100, but in theory that's it. Now the first thing is, in the end, the 100 does not matter. It's great to have 100, but from a pure business perspective, this lighthouse score has no impact. And a few months ago, this score was at the top, so many people thought that this score influenced SEO or the Google search rankings, which is totally not true. So in theory, having here a 98 or an 87 or a 50 in theory does not matter. So especially this score. What does matter is, where is it? If you're looking up, because now it's at the top, is basically so this is a one-time test at this point in time instantly, just like web page test, where you choose a location, you run a test, and then you have that single location. What actually matters from a performance perspective is, and from an SEO perspective, are your core web vitals. And here you see then that it's passed on the origin with the largest contentful paint of 0.9 seconds on desktop. And on mobile, sorry, and on desktop it's even 0.9. So basically, I care mostly about this, but yeah, having a 100 here does give you some kind of tip. Does give you some things. Am I blindly staring at this? No, not really. Here you, for example, see ensure text remains visible during font load. So it doesn't impact the score, but I get like this diagnostics, like, oh, you need to add font preloading. Sorry, not font preloading. You need to add a user visible behavior to the font. And in that case, in this case, it's 170 milliseconds. But I personally don't like to switch fonts, because that gives you layout shifts. Now it's actually a bit on the heavier side. Normally it's around 30 milliseconds, 40 milliseconds. So I rather wait 30, 40 milliseconds for my end users to see their text without having a layout shift than having to worry about layout shift. So in my view, if you self-host your fonts,
Yep.
if you preload your fonts,
Mhm.
then adding this thing does not make sense. And so yes, scores can be nice and fun, but always take it with a grain of salt and decide yourself: is it worth spending time on that? Yes or no. Just to give you, I guess though this is the website. So this is Trio, which uses
Yep.
the Crux data to visualize it, and here you can see the performance, real user. So this is not this is like not a developer blog with like 100 users, and I'm like in a well-connected, like refreshing 5 times a day to look at my own website. This is people everywhere, from Australia, from Indonesia, from India, from the US, from beautiful Canada, from Mexico, everywhere, using 3G connection, the worst, visiting the website on their train. So
Mhm.
as you can see, I spent a lot of time improving performance. So as you can see here, largest contentful paint, 0.7 disaster. This is now desktop. So let's look here at the things,
Mobile.
and let's have a look at the percentiles. Here you can see that in the last month, each time when my kids go to bed and my wife falls asleep in front of the television, I pick my laptop and I try to squeeze something. So one of the things I could, for example, explain is the few things I did to get from here to there. That
Mhm.
might be something we could look at. But yeah, so scores, yeah, it's nice. And I was really happy when I went from 0.9 to 0.8. But I'm like sometimes also at a level like, Tim, does that really, really matter for my end users? They likely don't. It's not that they give me a nice friendly email saying, hey, Tim, I saw that your website got faster because you went from 0.9 to 0.8. That's not happening. But at least from my perspective, I'm a happier man if I see and I use the website to learn new techniques. What I do care about, and that's a lot, is, and let's actually check here. Let's have a look at the 90 percentile. What I do care about is how many users actually have a bad experience. Because in my
Mhm.
view, some people say like, from a Google perspective, once you have a green rating at the 75th percentile,
Mhm.
in theory, you can say like, oh, I reached my goals, and uh, I don't spend further on that.
Yeah.
Now, from my perspective, is like, if you feel that performance matters, if you know that a slow website is a pain, in my view, having users, in this case, it's 0.8%,
Mhm.
this is something which I try, and I know it will be impossible to get that to zero, but in theory, that's my ultimate aim. Can I make the website so fast that I have like 0% or near zero bad experiences? Because
Mhm.
that's really what I want to avoid.
Mhm.
And yeah, so as you can see here, it's like every little step,
Yeah.
it's like little things, little squeezing here, squeezing there,
Mhm.
and trying to get to that ultimate goal.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, with respect to you talked about, what you did to get from point 9 to point 8 or point 8 to point 7. I'm not sure. I definitely want to look at that. But also, what are the possibilities? And that's only if you do remember and or have it sort of still logged in history. What you'd done for that gentleman who was trying to go from 90 to like 100.
Yeah. So the thing is, I did that during the weekend,
Okay.
and so I can let's go to uh, Twitter notifications. Where was it? Because I did it back then. My wife was actually not happy because it was during the weekend and I was on my
Ah,
phone. So I did the webpage test on my phone and I quickly had a look.
I'm
So where
sorry
is it?
about that.
No, that's a little bit later. Yeah, as you can see, I have I'm too often on Twitter.
Oh,
Here it is.
don't even sweat it.
So here, that was his webpage test. Oh, we can have his test. We can have this test. So this was the test. So this was this demo from Mustafa,
Uh-huh.
and he looked at a 4G connection from Virginia, USA, and he basically got like an 80 score. So
Yeah.
what I did is I basically looked at this waterfall, and basically had a quick look here. And I like to look at the visual loading of the website. As you can see, it's like a lot of it's basically a blank screen.
Hmm.
And then at a certain point in time here, you see the largest
Yeah.
contentful paint. Um, Now here you can actually see that it's done visible instantly. When I ran that same test, let's try test run number 2. Maybe it's visible there.
Hmm.
When I ran the test, it was um, yeah, basically what happened was, here now this is the largest contentful paint, but in
Hmm.
the test I did, basically the text which was appearing here, this
Hmm.
front-end developer, that was the largest contentful paint element. So what I
Okay.
did is I basically went to Web Vitals
Yes.
in web page test, and then I looked at what is the largest contentful paint element. In this case it's text.
Hmm.
And because I saw that the text, as you can see, he has some, here you see the 3
Yep.
fonts he added. They arrive at the time that the text actually becomes visible. So here, if you can see that at 2.4 seconds,
Yep.
the text becomes visible. And that's basically when the font, roughly when the fonts are present.
Hmm.
So in this case, it was actually very easy, and I checked that on my phone. Typical problem, because the fonts are late discovered. So if they first need to download the CSS, and the
Yep.
browser needs to parse the CSS and see that which fonts it needs, and then it can only trigger the request. So my advice to him was, if your hero element is based on fonts,
Yep.
make sure to preload them. So then, in theory, they would arrive here,
Yep.
and then as soon as the CSS is parsed, the fonts would be there, and then you would likely be at 1.5.
Yeah.
The CSS would be a little bit slower because they would first download the fonts. So I guess it would be at 1.5, 1.6 seconds, which is then in the green. The other thing I think he could do, but I didn't go in detail, but now that I look at it, is how WOF2 is great. But this TTF file is like an older font. So that's
Oh.
here, as you can see,
Yep.
123 kilobytes.
Yep.
If he switches that to WOF2, that's slightly smaller. And then, because he has like a small block and his content is under control, he potentially could also do some font subsetting to make the font also a little bit
Yep.
faster.
Yep.
In this case, you could then also argue, should he preload all 3 fonts, or maybe just the ones which really matter for above the fold?
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's then potentially that little millisecond squeezing you could play with. But that's basically I did. I went to his
Yep.
webpage test. I had a look at what was the largest contentful paint element. Oh, it's a font. So then you don't need to talk about image optimizations, all the typical stuff you do. But then it's purely preload the fonts, and that's it. There was
Yeah.
another person who then also told that he also had some kind of animation somewhere where it basically faded in,
Hmm.
and he told to remove the animation, or there was another reply related to that. So that was another thing he could he did. But
Okay.
the main issue was this. Yeah, so I
Yeah.
did this within 5 minutes from my
Yep.
phone, but 5 minutes was enough to make my wife a little bit angry.
Hey, I didn't want to start any problems there, so I
No
have to
worries, no
apologize
worries.
about that. I'll make sure to not ping you on weekends.
No,
You
it's
know,
my own. It's fine. It's fine.
it's all good. But thank you very much for that. And no, that was great because again, we get back to the idea that, and maybe I talked about it during the stream, but I certainly have off camera, and I will keep saying this, that there are some low hanging fruits that people sometimes just forgot or didn't realize they didn't do, and which is good. But there are some details sometimes that are never going to be discovered until you start to look at the waterfall, until you start to see where things are actually loaded, when they're being discovered, when the bytes are coming down the wire. These are all things that matter. And then hopefully once you start to understand that part, you'll see where to make the adjustments in the development. Now, let's maybe take a look at some of the stuff that you worked on. You said, taking some sites from point 9 to point 8 or whatever else you had done in terms of like the ultra optimizations.
Yeah, perfect. Let's do that. So a key thing is, let's see how fast that is. LCP, and let's try to load that one. You can still see my screen, right?
Yes, I can.
Yeah, perfect. So what I do is to really get to the exact details. In my view, at a certain point in time, you need a run based solution, because then you can really see how your website behaves under real world conditions. So what you're seeing here is the public facing part of my RUM. So I basically query in this case, I'm using Impulse, the Impulse API, and I build these screens here. And as you can see here, I have the targets I want to set, and let's have a look. So what I normally then do is I look at certain patterns, like under which conditions do I spot that performance is degrading. For example, now it looks a little bit, because now everything is green. It's a little bit. At first glance, it might sound a little bit boring, but here, for example, you see that from the home page has relatively more red beacons than, for example, other pages. So that might be an indication to fix certain things. Another thing I do is, because especially when you're tuning for LCP, I view there are two parts. Either it's your time to first byte which is slow, or it's the front end part which is slow, and or a combination of both. And one of the things I like to do is I created a custom timer.
Yes.
Which is I call it LCP front end, and that's basically what is the impact of LCP once I receive the first byte. So without the DNS overhead, without the TCP connections, without the backend being slow, because there are typically a lot of variations. Was it served from the CDN cache? Yes or no? Was it is the user coming from Australia? Yes or no? Or from Belgium? That can all that typically has an impact on your time to first byte. But when I make CSS optimizations, I want to focus on what is the impact on the front end part. And from that perspective, the time to first byte at that point in time is pure noise. So that's the first thing I did, and that really allows you to zoom in on the right things. And then sometimes you can see that there are entirely different things. Let's see if I spot something. Yeah, let's. So what are a few things which I uncovered from here? Let me actually. One of the things was, let's click here. Yes. As you can see, I have advertising on this page. And what is the problem? That advertising typically doesn't load instantly. It's JavaScript that runs, and then you see the ad. So from an LCP perspective, what is if you're looking at this page, what is the hero element? What is the LCP element? Is it this small thumbnail, which in my mind, or for my end users, that's the most important thing. So I care about this. That should show up. So I prefer these to show up first, and then the banner. So what I noticed in my RUM data, and I could then also validate that in my page test, is that on pages which didn't have like a hero image, and let me take the car. For example, on pages which didn't have a hero image, that this banner was picked as the hero element. So I could, for example, see that normally you would say, I had a few pages which really had a very bad LCP and also a very bad front-end component for LCP. And when I looked at how many bytes do I ship, I actually saw, those are not pages with too big images, because that's typically what I would then expect. Like, are there too many images? Is the image too big? Is the image not optimized? Is there a video on it? Something heavy? No, what I saw was that my pages with the lowest LCP, but the slowest LCP, were pages which did send a lot of bytes. And that was basically, these pages are quite lightweight. this was the hero element.
Wow.
And what did I do to fix that? Is I split my content in two parts.
Hmm.
I created like a variable which says, is the visual user experience high or low? So let me pick another one. Let's take let me see if I spot something. Yeah, scale modeling. Some of the topics are a little bit. Let's take this boat. So
Yes.
this is like a very visual, still a very visual page. Why? Because the hero element is larger than the
Yeah.
ad, so that's
Hmm.
like a good user experience.
Hmm.
While this topics page is like a low visual user experience.
Hmm.
The same is true, for example, for let's take the brands page. Let's take this German brand here as well. This is also a visual low page. So
Hmm.
what I do is at the server side, I decide, is this a page with high visual quality or low visual quality? And in case it's low visual quality, instead of loading the hero image, which is becomes the banner as being JavaScript,
Hmm.
and having to wait 1.5 seconds, what you will see is that I basically cheated, but I would say in a positive way, is for on those lower quality pages, I
Hmm.
basically decided I don't show real advertising. I have like some free advertising or affiliate campaigns where I don't make money per view but
Hmm.
per click, and I don't care. I don't need to track how many views I had.
Hmm.
So on those pages, what do? I basically just inject a out of the box standard picture element
Okay.
without the JavaScript, and I it's like a carousel. So I have like 10 different banners which can be rotated,
Oh.
and that this results in my LCP now corresponding to more corresponding to the reality of the user already seeing this one and this one, rather than
Hmm.
having to wait 1.5 seconds. And actually, my advertisers were also happy because they didn't have to spend their money on those lower quality pages, and my LCP got better. So that's one approach. Make sense? Any questions from the
Absolutely.
audience?
So basically, what we had is a situation where you had pages that were, your own content was so visually sparse, meaning more text than images, in all likelihood, and small images. And the your advertising was actually much larger in visual content, we'll say, and the LCP was being calculated as per what the advertising was providing in terms of, like, the injection of whatever ad it would be this time.
Yeah,
So your LCP was at the mercy of whatever ad was coming up. So if it was coming up late, the LCP would just be like, I'm just waiting for this to come in.
correct,
Wow.
correct.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah. Now, a few things I already did in the past in order to improve performance in general was I stopped using third-party advertising modules like AdSense or many others because they really add a lot of overhead. So I switched to a self-hosted version where I can basically have full control on the JavaScript is on my own domain.
Hmm.
The images are all on my own domain. They're
Hmm.
optimized, so this one is likely AVIF when the browser supports AVIF. So even though my standard out of the box ads are typically much faster anyway today than if I would use a third party solution. But
Hmm.
even though it was faster than a third party solution, I still had to do um, this because otherwise it was loaded via JavaScript. Another thing I did related to that is very simple.
Hmm.
Is let's take this image.
Why don't
Um,
you go ahead?
yeah, is as you can see on mobile. Previously, I had a banner here at the top,
Hmm.
and that was off on a phone what basically resulted was then also the banner was actually the hero element, even on even when a big image was present, because the this is now, but on the phone this is even smaller and the content was pushed down.
Mhm.
And there as well, my mobile LCP was bad because the LCP element was actually the banner image. So I decided on mobile devices to not show a banner at the top
Mhm.
and rather show it a little bit lower. So that also gave a better user experience.
Mhm. Mhm.
So that's it. And I think there was a question in the chat: why don't more ads load that way? I
Exactly. I
think
was
the
actually
only
just
reason
going to
is
pop that
money,
up.
money, money, money. So when I did that switch a few years ago, from a money perspective, at that point in time, it was not the most wise decision. But on the longer term, I think it benefited me. So I actually catched up, and so that's thank you for that question.
Yeah.
Uh, but
Shout out to
ad
Tanner Hodges
performance
in the
really
building.
impacts your performance.
Yeah. No, that was a great question, and thank you, Tanner. I saw you. I was just looking for an opportune time to sort of slide that in. So thank you for that question. So getting back to this page right here, um, you'd mentioned that even though there was a larger image below it, the ad was being selected as the LCP. Did you want to sort of like rehash that again? Because I'm not sure.
Let's take that one. Let's take let's so if I inspect and go to the console, and let's go not for responsive, but let's take an iPhone SE.
Mhm.
Let's refresh. Yeah. What you see here is before, what you would have is, let me add here this section, article, element style, margin top. Oops. So let me add a random margin to show you.
Mhm.
And I think it was like 120 pixels. Yeah. So what basically happened was, before I had the ad would appear here,
Mhm.
and then on this page it's now okay, but on other pages you would actually see that when the image, this is all content which is uploaded by real users. So sometimes the image does not take up the full real estate,
Mhm.
and then this image was also picked up as the hero element.
Mm.
And
Okay.
that's why I decided, like, I want to improve the user experience and not have this additional space and then
Mhm.
potentially having to wait 1 or 2 seconds before you see something on mobile. I basically decided, let's skip the top banner,
Mhm.
give more real estate to the actual image, and then the banner which is loaded below is still as slow as the one at the top, but as it's not that visually impacted, the performance feels faster.
Yeah, absolutely. Interesting. And, and that's never hit me like that in terms of, the opportunity for some, you know, uh, a placed ad to suddenly be the largest content from paint, and obviously that's going to create much chaos in terms of it being calculated. And again, it's waiting, times passing by, and then finally it pops in. Then you're like, oh my god, this is like a bigger image than the rest of my content. So these are things that obviously people need to talk about and or hear about so that they can make a wise decision, because they'll sit there and have like a page that looks like Craigslist, just all text, and suddenly the ad at the top is going to be their LCP, and they're going to be screwed, for lack of a better word.
Yep.
Wow. Well, thank you for shining that light. Let me go back to the comments here. I don't think I've seen anything new. So, just in the wild. So this is your personal site, obviously, and you've tweaked it in a manner that has made it like as again, fast and resourceful as possible. Because again, part of the game here is managing resources properly. Um, with respect to that pattern that you've described now a couple of times, do you see that in the wild quite often, where ads are actually coming in as the LCP?
Yeah, it can. it definitely can happen, especially on, I would say, listing pages. For example, a newspaper. If you're looking at a newspaper, typically when you're like on the product detail page, it happens less because there you have like the big image.
Mhm.
But for example, secondhand car websites. If you do a search, you get like small thumbnails, but they also
Mhm.
make their money via advertising. Typically, then the hero element becomes the ad, and that's then also the LCP element.
Mhm.
Um, so that, and in my view, if you then, for example, like I did, remove the ad to improve your LCP, but in theory, it also, in, I don't see that as cheating, because in the end, you're also improving the user experience, or deciding I still want my ads, but maybe I made a mistake and I focus too much on the advertising and I give a bit more real estate to actual content. So
Mhm.
my actual content is picked up. In my view, that also benefits the user.
Wow. Okay. This is super interesting. Incoming comment here from Mr. Meaden. I didn't read all of it. Can you see it? Because I
Yeah.
just covered you up. Thank you, Patrick, for the short blog post. What does it say here? With the move towards triple keying, iframe caches, it might become possible to do backend ad targeting. Okay, where your server makes a call to the ad provider and you get the resources to include the HTML. That said, as it stands now, the ad targeting benefits from being called from the user's browser, where cookies can be better identified. Can what cookies can better identify them, pardon me, and insert this JS is an easier integration model. All right. I mean, it's the ad industry. How do I do this? I remember a while back, I was following, I guess, an ad industry sort of like company. I don't know what, and they would have these presentations, and they were never talking about how the ads were performing on sites. And I always thought that was disappointing because I felt like back then it was an issue, and it's obviously still an issue now. But um, you know, and I've known of a few people trying to revolutionize the ad industry as well in terms of getting more performant ads. Now, is that even possible? You know.
Yeah. So when before I switched to my own self-hosted
Mhm.
advertising, I had Google AdSense, and then once every week I got like an email. Oh, why don't you try our ad platform? So
Mhm.
I often did like A/B tests on the performance side. So in Rum, I was able to identify, okay, this is advertiser A, so this is ad platform A, ad platform B,
Mhm.
and then I was able to look at what was, for example, the impact of the JavaScript, their main JavaScript loading, and
Mhm.
you could see substantial differences. So, for example, a nice example there is one of the ad platforms gave me substantially more money compared to, let's say, I think back then, let's say it was Google. Um, so, although I earned a lot more per impression, the problem was that because the ad was loading slower, that I lost impressions because people basically scrolled down and the ad was not
Loaded
tracked.
yet? Yeah.
So, and the end result was that although they paid more because of less impressions, I actually the impact was, let's say, it was like neglectable. So that's one thing. And the other problem with when you talk about ad performance to an advertiser is when they talk about ad performance, they think about how much money do you earn, like what is the performance of the ad network. They're talking about money and clicks and
Yeah.
click-through rate and how many advertisers there are. They're talking about CPM rates, CPC rates. That's for them performance. They're not talking about speed. So when you talk about them about performance, make sure that, yeah,
Yeah.
are you talking about speed or the
Yeah.
business performance?
Exactly. I'd be very curious. And by the way, Mr. Meenan, that was a joke on my behalf, about the blog post. But you know, I'd be very curious to know if there are some advertisers out there that are trying to optimize the load experience. Now, I will say this. I was speaking to an engineer who actually is at Facebook right now, and he was telling me that he works, like his team works with companies to try to get them to, optimize their ads as much as possible to not ruin the experience. And he said it's like, they do their best, but they can't spend all day with like one client, right? So there are some people out there that are trying to do that, but somewhere along the line things obviously go south, and it just does not work out. And this is sort of loosely connected to our last episode for anyone who caught the episode with Mr. Simon Hearn, and we were talking about request map, and how
Yeah.
third parties were interesting to say the least. And the advertisers, often enough, sometimes they didn't know what they were getting into, let alone yourself, because like you said, you might contact an ad network and be like, hey, I'm signing up X, Y, and Z. And after, a couple dotted lines get signed, and some of these ads, they pop up onto your site, you have no idea what's going on. So it was very eye-opening to see what request map was able to sort of shed the light on, and another powerful tool, um, um, that's integrated into web page tests, of course. But yeah, ads are a little crazy, and it's unfortunate because everyone wants to make money. I get it, but you don't want to ruin the experience. Ain't that right, Pratik? How is this get this GT3? What? Oh, okay, it might have been on the site. Who knows? Um, ads. Anything else that you want to sort of, a couple examples, or that's pretty much how you operate. You sort of hack away on some ads, and make sure that the experience is for the user, but you still want to make a little bit of money with the ads, I suppose.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So other things I do, and to the extreme, is reducing my CSS files.
Okay.
So a few things I do is, so I always inline my CSS files. So
Okay.
this is basically the full CSS. I think
Hmm.
it's around 170 rules. But the advantage, because I always inline them, is that based on the these CSS is injected server side.
Hmm.
On the homepage, I, for example, don't need the CSS for this timeline, or I don't need the CSS for these elements. So the CSS is injected context aware based on, for example, if people log in, they need a little bit more CSS because there is like the logout button. There are some additional icons. I don't load them when the CSS when people are visitors. So that's a perfect way to reduce my CSS.
Hmm.
So that's one thing. And the other thing, the exercise I did over the past months was basically trying to reduce the amount of DOM elements. Um, and yeah, instead of having like 5 divs to explain certain things, yeah, just use out of the box standard HTML5 tags, and yeah, try to get to remove as many things. And just as an example, if I do for example, here on this updates page, here you see these all these facets. That's like 75 elements. So you have this input, you have this checkbox, you then have the label.
Hmm.
And before I had like one additional div and then one additional span. But if you have that 75 times here and then 75 times there, then you're quickly at 300, 400, 500, 600 additional DOM elements.
Hmm.
And that, if you can tweak that easily, especially on these repeating blocks, you can really get rid of a lot of DOM elements, meaning that the layout is faster, but also when you then click, let's see if that's actually fast. But yeah, this then needs to redo a lot of things in JavaScript. So fewer elements means also typically faster, not only on the network side, but also on the execution side,
Yeah.
faster and quicker results.
Yep. And it's funny because these are, we get back to some of the earliest and most fundamental sort of, I don't want to call them rules, but recommendations in terms of, how to make sure things render as fast as possible, and things like that. So that's, it's always good to remember, that these things in 2022 are still, vitally important, in trying to get things to load as quickly as possible. And it's funny you should say about the um, radio buttons and stuff like that. There are days where I'm, yes, I do some online shopping, folks, and I'll toggle some of these buttons, and it's like, oh my god, you know like nothing's responsive. It's like click, and I just wait. Oh, okay, now it's refreshing. And unclick, same thing. So it's these are things that if you went under the hood, you'd probably spot some of these very issues that you talked about. Being able to reduce unnecessary operations.
Yep.
you know uh Man, that's awesome. uh Tim, thank you very much for spending some time with us. Like I said, I thought that that interaction that we had on the weekend, and again, please extend all my apologies to your lovely wife for interrupting her time.
I
And
bought her flowers. It's already okay.
okay, now how much do I owe you?
No, nothing.
But what I was gonna say is, no, it was a very interesting interaction, and it just made me think, like, there's probably a few more like this developer who just, they hit this ceiling and they're not sure what to do now, and often enough it gets back to that sort of, literacy that I've talked about. It requires um, a little bit more know-how than, you know 20 possible, recommendations. So, this is what, WebHS Live is here for, to help you understand and see some of the engineers out there who are well um, uh, trained in this area, and they can show you how to get that extra 10 points to get you to 100. um, that being said, like I said, you don't have anything you want to announce. You have a course coming up. I don't know. You're gonna do your own stream. I don't know.
No, not really actually.
Yeah,
So
yeah. You're not speaking anywhere that we should make sure we buy a ticket for.
yeah, I was going to speak at a conference in this particular country, but we have some troubles with that country, so I
Oh,
will
okay.
not be able to travel
Yeah,
there,
yeah,
which is a
yeah, yeah.
pity. But yeah, other than that, I'm looking forward to the conference in Amsterdam, Performance Now,
Okay.
and
I mean, since you're talking about it, I'll follow up. Tim is talking about Perf Now, Performance Now, which is a conference that takes place in, as you said, Amsterdam. Um, until the pandemic, it was annual. So plans are that it's going to take place this year. I believe it's late October. So anyone in Europe, I would strongly recommend that you take your probably last week of October and block it off. Because if you're into performance, you're going to want to be there. And I say Europe because, you don't want to travel too far. But you definitely gonna want to check that out. It's a fantastic conference. You'll definitely take away a lot. You'll be surrounded by the like-minded of this performance space, and it's like a nice venue. It's just going to be awesome. I'm looking forward to it. And obviously, we're going to be able to catch up in person, which is going to be amazing. So I look forward to seeing you there for sure. Since we're talking about conferences, I wanted to announce that, oh, maybe I should share my screen. Oh, no, I'm not going to try. Um, Tim Kadlik is actually going to be over at, I believe he's going to be in Germany next week for Beyond Tellerrand. He's going to be speaking there. So that's going to be, I think, May 2nd and 3rd. Um, oh, I'm not going to try to share. And so WebPitch is going to be on the road. So if you're going to be on Teleran and you see Tim speak, I think he speaks on the Monday, like 10 o'clock local time, which is going to be extremely early on my side of the world. So I'm not sure if I'll be able to catch that. So go check that out. Well, speaking of myself, I'm actually going to be in California. I'm going to be at Reactathon. That's taking place outdoors, actually. It's going to be pretty interesting in a outdoor venue. So I'm pretty jazzed to see what that's like. So I'm not essentially speaking, but I will be there for a particular session that I'll be hosting. So if you see me, if you have perf questions, you want to hang out, kind of kick it in person, outdoors, I'll be there. So come say hi. Certainly. Is there anything else I want to talk about team wise? I think that's it. Yeah. As usual, we're going to get this recording edited, chopped up, and ready to go so you can watch it again. We have our YouTube channel, so you can go see that it's going to be there, I'd say, probably by Monday. You could also go check out the episode that we did together. I think it was early April, like April 7th or something like that, which was, again, an amazing episode. So you'll be able to go check that out. I think it was called Going Global. And I think we're looking at a bunch of resources and how they're loading across the planet. So that's a good one. And beyond that, if you're a web page test user, ping me. Ping me on Twitter, actually. Let me show that. You know, the stage is open to web page test live. So if you're comfortable being on camera, on a stream, you have a nice camera, you have a good microphone, whatever, ping me up and we could talk about having you on. Tanner. And obviously, if you want to follow Tim, which you absolutely should want to, you can find him here. Is that correct, Tim? Did I spell that correctly?
That's perfectly 100% correct.
Excellent. You know, I'll be honest, a few times I've been like, I think there's an extra E somewhere here. I think I'm messing up. So I just do a cut and paste to make sure I don't mess that up. And as usual, you want to make sure you follow Web Page Test on Twitter. So at Real Web Page Test. If you have any questions, you want to complain about not being able to get to 100, you're stuck at 90, let us know. As always, you want to sign up for an account. The account's free. Go to webpagetest.org, and there are a bunch of things that you get from signing up for the free account. So go check that out. And that's it. So, folks, thank you very much for joining us. We had a great time today. Hope we didn't eat up too much of your time and you had lunch at the same time. I think there's like a double entendre there somewhere. Either way, look for us for the next episode. I think I'm going to try to be live from a conference next week. I'll keep you tuned. But we are also going to announce a Twitter space, and that should be coming in the next 24 to 48 hours. So we'll probably make the announcement first on Twitter. A Twitter space. I guess I should make the announcement on Twitter. And it's going to be an interesting one. So make sure you look out for that. So I guess you'll have to follow us on Twitter for that. That said, folks, thank you very much. Have yourself a great day and catch you probably next week. All right. Take care.
Thank you. Bye, everybody.
All right. And I'm going to talk to you in the back channels right now. Bingo.